other things on the grains, right? So even if it's from the grains, in Yoitzi de Chayvas Gimel Seudas Shabbos, he's not Yoitze. This chiyuv that we mentioned in Sif Aleph to eat 3 Seudas of Shabbos, ad sheyochal lechem. He has to actually eat bread, so it has to be the grain that was made into a dough and then baked into a bread, right? Shem avochin alav hamoitzi ubichas hamasa. That you would make a bracha of hamoitzi, and then after you would have the chiyuv of birchas hamasa. What does this exclude? You could also turn that grain into a dough, but you mix it with meteros or whatever, and then it's called pasabo bekisnin, and then you will not make hamoitzi, you will make mizaynis. So the Alter Rebbe is saying clear, it has to be a bread that's made with water, and the bracha is hamoitzi, and the chiyuv of birchas hamazon when you're done. We know from other sources that a suda means bread. The main element of a suda is the bread. As it says in the pasuk, that a person, his sustenance, his survival is based on bread. And by the mon, it's also, it refers to the mon as lechem, and the mon is the place that we even learn the whole idea of the Gimel Seudas. This is the lechem. Okay. This is what the Alter Rebbe says in Reish Ayin Dalit. As far as the third Seudah, however, we're not going to get into that. He says, Yesh Oimim at the end of Vav, he says, Yesh Oimim Shebe Seudah Shlishis, Ein Tzarech Lechem Klal. You don't need lechem. The Alter Rebbe will address it. So lechatchila, the halach is all the Gimel Seudas, but in Reish Tzaddik Aleph we will find out that you could be mekel when it comes to the third Seudah. And there's different days of how much you could be mekel. Okay, the biggest pull is really in Shulchan Aruch the most lenient is payers. To eat payers. Officially, on record, that's the minhag of Chabad. The minhag of Chabad is that we're noyeg to go with the most lenient opinion when it comes to the third Seudah, which is and we eat payers. That's on record. What happens? That's a different story. What we actually do, but that's what it's that's what the official record is. Okay, it's a very interesting topic. Not for tonight. There's a very interesting sikha from the Rebbe about this third Seudah. And
Why don't we do the third?
Well, right now from Shulchan Aruch we know that we could be lenient when it comes to the third Seudah. But for the other two Seudas, the Alter Rebbe is saying, this I want to focus on what the Alter Rebbe says here as far as a Seudah having to be lechem and lechem that you make hamoitzi. That's what the Alter Rebbe says over here. But interestingly, we'll find that in Hilchos Birchas Hamazon, so there's a couple chelik aleph over here, if you would like. In Hilchos Birchas Hamazon, we find something different. This is Kuf Pei Ches Sif Yud. Kuf Pei Ches Sif Yud. Basically, the Alter Rebbe here is discussing when is the din that if you forgot to say your Yalav Yavai, you have to repeat Birchas Hamazon. And the basic halacha is that if it's a Seudah that you're chayiv to eat, and you're chayiv to eat bread, then you have to repeat the Birchas Hamazon. But if it's not a Seudah, if you're not chayiv to eat, then why do you have to repeat Birchas Hamazon? I didn't have to eat. I didn't have to bring myself to the chiyuv of Birchas Hamazon in the first place, right? I did eat, okay, so I have chayiv to Birchas Hamazon, but you don't have to repeat. Okay, so in the context of this halacha,
I don't get it.
if it's a Seudah that you're chayiv to eat, then you have to repeat. If you skipped either at say or yahoo.
So only the third meal of the you don't have to say?
Forget about the third. We're not talking about the third. We're talking about the general idea of when do you have to repeat. Okay. Okay, Rosh Chodesh you don't have to repeat because Rosh Chodesh is on Shiur. Alter Rebbe says. Right. Holze b'Shabbos v'Yom Tov shesholish regalim. Avol b'chol. I'm reading now from Yud. Avol b'chol shel moed. There's no Shiur to the Seudah Chol Hamoed. Rosh Chodesh, and for that matter, even Rosh Hashanah. And the reason why Rosh Hashanah is because on Rosh Hashanah there's a day that you can even fast on Rosh Hashanah, right? Okay. But Rosh Hashanah yesh matira filosanis. Okay, I'm skimming through over here. I want to get to the main part. Masheke b'Shabbosis v'Yomim Tovim shesholish regalim shu chayiv lechol pas shemavochen alav b'chas hamosein, right? Which is what we said from Hilchos Shabbos, right? And why? Because them are across the Shabbos Einig, because the Seudah is based on the pasuk in Yeshaya that says that on Shabbos there has to be Einig, and then on Yom Tov it says v'samachtu b'chagecha ve'in Einig v'simcha v'lei achivas lechem, right? Shekovim ala Seudah, so it has to be actual bread that's considered a Seudah. Shalechem u'ikar Seudah shekol Seudah nikra al shem halechem. And now the Alter Rebbe says something here in parentheses. Umine lachamim. What about those kind of breads? She'ein kovin aleihem Seudah, right? Cake, for example. Cake we don't make hamoitzi because it's not the thing that you koveya a Seudah on. You koveya a Seudah on bread, but not cake, not what's called pasava b'kistin, or even bread that was baked together with fruit and so on and so forth. That's not something you koveya a Seudah, right? It says, if, however, you're going to have cake, says Alter Rebbe in the parentheses, tzorich lechom mehem kishir kriyas Seudah. Cake, if you eat bread, regardless of how much you eat, if you eat just a tiny bit, you still have to wash and you have to say a moitzi, right? If it's less than a kazayis, then you don't make a bracha by the washing. But you do have to wash and you do have to make a moitzi. When it comes to pasa baba kistin, which is like mezayna, you make a bracha mezaynis, right? However, if you eat a large shiur, what that shiur is, there's all kinds of different opinions, right? If you eat a large shiur, according to Alter Rebbe, the shiur is actually pretty big. That's already, the halacha is that the cake now becomes like bread. And since the cake becomes like bread, right, you do have to make hamoitzi, and you do have to say birchas hamazon on that bread, right? Says Alter Rebbe here in the parentheses, he's adding something that he said in Hilchos Shabbos. In Hilchos Shabbos, we think it has to be mamish bread, right? Now in the parentheses, we find out it could be cake. But if it's cake, it has to be cake that you are koilei Seudah, meaning you're eating a lot of cake. Interestingly, in the old Shulchan Aruch, not in the new one, in the new one it's actually in the bottom, you have here what's called the Hagois from the Maril, the brother of the Alter Rebbe. Says the Maril, Shamati mimenu b'seif yamov. I heard from my brother, the Alter Rebbe, later on, way after the Shulchan Aruch was written, right? Shechazer by he changed his mind. You could be yoytze Seudas Shabbos on mezainis, that you made a mezainis and you're not going to bench because you did not eat that much. That you still yoytze Seudas Shabbos. Why? Because the main thing, says the Maril, is that when you bench, you're going to mention the Kedusha of Shabbos or the Kedusha of Yom Tov, right? Well, it so happens to be that on Mizonis you're going to make what's called a Me'ein Shalish. The Me'ein Shalish is Ala Michya, for example, right? And in Ala Michya you're going to be Maskir Kedusha Sayoin, because you masked in Ala Michya. So he says the Alter Rebbe later on in his life he changed his mind and he was even more lenient and he said you could be Yotzei Seudas Shabbos just with Mizonis. Okay, very interesting. A lot of people don't know that. It's not even a Hilchos Shabbos. It's a order from the Maril. Okay, L'maisa, we know that the Rebbe was very makbid. So I hear that the Rebbe was makbid to wash from an olamah. But we know for sure that Rebbe didn't wash on Shabbos, right? Because the Rebbe would come down to Fabrengen, right? They would make Kiddush. The Rebbe would have Mezainis, right? He didn't eat that much Mezainis to be Kaveh Sukkah, right? He only ate enough Mezainis, and afterwards he made only an Alamichya, right? And sometimes the Fabrengen went so late that right away after Fabrengen they would have a Mincha, and the Mincha was already late for Mincha, so they went straight into Ma'ariv. This was something they ever did publicly, right? Which is interesting because the Reb Chaim was a Rav in Eretz Yisrael, or the Babich Rav in Eretz Yisrael in the times of the Rebbe Rashab. He actually even traveled to the Rebbe Rashab in Lubavitch. He went to Lubavitch. He writes about something that he observed. Rav Chaim No says that even the Maril, who says that it's enough to eat mezainis, right? But it has to be the kind of mezainis that he could be Kaveh Suda. Because some kind of mezainis you cannot be even Kaveh Suda. No matter how much you eat, right? You don't have to. You won't have to wash. You won't have to make a mitzvah. Like for example, noodles, spaghetti, kugel, things like that, right? These things are not a pas. It's not considered a pas. So you cannot be Kaveh Suda in it even if you eat a big ship, right? So Chaim No says that when the Maril says the Alter Rebbe changed his mind, and it's enough if you just make an alamichya, but it has to be that something that had you eaten, it still has to have some kind of a connection to lechem, right? What's its connection to lechem? That if you would eat a lot of it, it would be considered lechem, and you would have to make hamoitzi and b'chasam. That's what Rabbi Chaim No says, but others disagree with him. And they say, if you read carefully the Maril, the Nekuda is that you're going to be Maski Kedushas Hayek. If you eat Kugel, you're going to make an Alamichya, regardless, even if you can't be Kaveh Sukkah. And you will be Maski, the Kedushas Hayek, whether it's Shabbos or whether it's Yom Tov, right? I saw that they have the Kitzur of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch for Shabbos, the blue books, right? So some of them are printed with Hisafa in the back of more Arichas and Pepulim. And over there, they write about this. They say that Chaim Notaka says what he says, but it's not mashma from the lashon of the Mahar. I want to take it a step further. I said, if the whole thing is Kedushas Haskara of the Kedushas Ayam, right? So then, what if you eat grapes? Grapes, you're also going to make another thing. That's a problem because, I mean, I don't know if you could call that a Suda, whatever. But the Gabe mocking Suda for Kiddush, by the way, the whole Indian of Chiyuv Suda has nothing to do with Kiddush but mocking Suda. Kiddush has to be done in conjunction with a Suda. But that Suda doesn't have to be the kind of Suda that he eats a Seudas Shabbos. It just has to be a Suda. It could be anything. It could even be a revius of wine. Right? But that's the Gabe Kiddush for Mokim Suda. For Seudas Shabbos, I don't know. Officially, we have at least in print, we have some days that say that anything you make Mezainis on, even Kugel or whatever it might be, even if you can't be Kaveh Suda, you're Yaitze Seudas Shabbos. Mezainis, Bivadai. That's for sure. Even if you're not Kaveh Suda, because this we saw Maisarav, we saw that anyway, that's as far as that's concerned. One interesting nekuda that I thought you might appreciate.
What makes something that you can't be Kaveh Suda, no matter how much you eat?
If it's not a pas, it has to be called a pas. It has to be a dough that was baked into like a cake, a roll, or whatever. But if
I don't bake. You boil them.
yeah, but you also bake. You boil and bake them. You do both. You boil and bake them. You do bake them. It's not just boiled. The boil just makes the crust on the outside, and then it goes into the oven. You boil it, and then it goes in the oven. Yeah.
The katamazon you say all the time when you
eat bread. When you eat bread.
Bread. But if there is a product that's made from flour, I'm talking about just if there is a product that's made of flour. Do you say Birkat Hamazon?
It depends.
Oh no.
It depends. If it's a bread, yes. If it's a cake,
no. You just like you say, kugel.
No, you do not say
kugel. Kugel
no.
is made from spaghetti. If you eat spaghetti.
Spaghetti, no. No.
No, spaghetti.
No.
Spaghetti is
You
for
make
flour.
mezonot and you make ala michya.
But you don't say.
You don't say Birchat Hamazon. You say a shorter Birchat Hamazon. It's a short version.
Birkat Hamazon?
It's called me'en Birchat Hamazon. It's a short version. Ala michya ala kalkala v'atumurat hasadeh. You heard about that, yeah. You should start using it. It's, yeah. Anyway, there's another issue that I figured I would like to touch upon. And this, you can take out the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch Hatzvi-Bais again and go to Siman Reish Samach Ches. Okay? We're going to look at Sif Aleph, and then we're going to go to Sif Zayin. Reish Samach Ches. I was looking, this new Shulchan Aruch, the new Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, is gewaltig. It's a beautiful piece, right? I was looking for this Maril yesterday in the new. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. I went home and I said, I'm going to take my old one, right? I found it right away because it's like a printed as a Hagah on the side. In the new one, it's printed. They mention it in the footnotes, but it wasn't printed. Yeah. Anyway, okay, Reish Samachas. So, there's a halacha as follows. Sorech lema pashas vayechulhu betfilas arvis. When we daven arvis in Shemona Esrei, we say the parsha of Vayechulhu. If this was added, we know that Shemona Esrei was the nusach was established with Anshe Knesset Yagdil Torah. We just had it in the Rambam recently. If you learn Perek Echad, and that was already in the very beginning when they just came back for the second Beis Hamikdash in the time of Ezra. Yet they were masakin the Shemona Esrei. Right? Then a few hundred years later, Rabbi Gamliel added the 19th bracha of Olam Moshe. Okay? Why? Because when people came back to Eretz Yisrael, they came back from Bovel, and they did not know how to speak Lashon HaKodesh properly, and they didn't know how to be mesader, a proper way of prayer, of davening. So the Anshe Knesset Yagdil formulated what's called a nusach. And this is the nusach we use. We follow that nusach, and that's what we do. Part of this nusach, is that in the Shemona Esrei of Shabbos, we include the parsha from Bereishis, from Ma'aseh Bereishis, Vayechulhu Hashomayim v'Haaretz v'chol tziva'om. Okay. Now, let's go to Sif Zayin.
It's not related to that's where some chess and that occupation.
I'm sorry. I'm reading from what's it called? From the Alter Rebbe. I'm saying the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. We'll get to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch soon. But let's look in Shulchan Aruch, the original Shulchan Aruch. Reish Samach Ches. You'll see why I'm doing this. Okay, so Reish Samach Ches, Eimer Vayechulhu betfilas arvis. That's Sif Aleph. Sif Zayin. Chayzrim Leimer Vayechulhu. When we finish Shemona Esrei, we repeat the parsha of Vayechulhu. Why do we repeat Vayechulhu? Mishum Yamtev Shachol Liyis b'Shabbos. Because if Yamtev falls out on Shabbos, right, we replace Shemona Esrei with the Yamtev Shemona Esrei. And although we insert certain things for Shabbos, but we do not insert Vayechulhu. I don't know why, but that's how apparently that's how the Anshe Knesset Yagdil Torah formulated the Nusach Shemona Esrei on Yom Tov that falls out on Shabbos, right? Since we don't say it in Shemona Esrei, right? So therefore we repeat it after Shemona Esrei. Now that's really only if it's Shabbos Yom Tov. Why do we do it every Shabbos? In order to be consistent. That's all, plain and simple, right? Since whenever there'll be a Shabbos and Yom Tov, you're going to skip Vayechulhu, so we were going to say it after, and we might as well already say it after. Every Shabbos we repeat Vayechulhu to be consistent. Yeah, it's a good question. Whatever, if you want, you can look into it a little more. But that's the basic reason. Okay. But there's also another reason. If somebody doesn't know how to daven, right? Now, normally for Shachris, Mincha, you have the Hilchos Shabbos. That's might see a person who doesn't know how to daven. For Arvis, not. Arvis is only on a shus, whatever, so we don't repeat Shvei Nasi Ba'arvis. But the Parsha, Vayechulhu, is a very important Parsha. Why? Because Vayechulhu is saying Eidos that Hashem created the world. And you'll see how important it is. You'll see soon from another halacha, right? So therefore, he didn't daven Shvei Nasi. Okay, it's only the shus. We're not going to repeat Shvei Nasi, but we want that person should be yotze at least with the Parsha of Vayechulhu, right? The other halacha is that when you come home and you make Kiddush, and your wife and your children who are not Mishul, and they perhaps did not daven Shvei Nasi, and they didn't say Vayechulhu, so before you say Kiddush, you say the Parsha of Vayechulhu to be mighty, as we'll soon see, right? In Simin Reish Hayin Aleph. Anyway, ends the Shulchan Aruch. V'oimrim oisei b'kol ram, you should say it out loud, umod, and standing up. Okay? I just want to point out, I didn't mark this because I didn't have a mind to say it, but if you look in the Neisa Kelim, it quotes from the Gemara that there was a chassid echad, right, that he saw another chassid in his dream, and his face was green. And he asked him, it was apparently someone who already passed away. Upanov moirikos, his face was all green, right? He asked him, why is your face all green? So he says that punishment. What's the punishment? Because when they would say Vayechulhu, and then they would say the Baracha of Mein Sheva, right? Moginovitz. And Kaddish, he would be talking. And this is his punishment for talking by Vayechulhu. Okay? I see a lot of people, they talk, they don't know. I hope their faces don't turn green. But this is the Gemara. It's a time, why? Whole shul is there being made on that Eibishter created the world, and you're busy talking, right? And therefore, it's you shouldn't talk a shul b'chal, but this is a time about which the Gemara, emphasizes with the story of the chassid. I know, I'm saying we shouldn't talk b'chal in a shul, but the Gemara brings the Maisa legabidus, okay? The pun of Merikos, he said, was because he was talking for Vayechulhu. Somehow he got away with the talking the other times. But anyway, and standing. Now, there's something that I've noticed when I was yet a bacher in Yeshiva, and if somebody didn't daven with a minyan, right? He runs over to say Vayechulhu with somebody else, right? I looked into it, and I came to the conclusion that there is Taka HaMoker, that'll be the Mishnah Brura, but we shouldn't follow this Mishnah Brura, and I'll show you why, okay? What is the Moker? It all goes to the Taz. Look in the Taz. The Taz on the side. Oh, I'm the only one with the Taz. Okay, so I'll read it carefully. Omad. Why did the Shulchan Aruch paskin that when you say Vayechulhu you have to be standing? Because we're saying Eidos. We're testifying that Hashem created the world. The halacha by Eidim is Ba'amida. It's a pasuk in Chumash. Right? Okay. That's what the Taz says. The Siyim Hatur, the Torah, and this Siman says that if somebody is not davening with a minyan, he should still say it. Says the Taz, if that's going to be the case, Al Kochuch Nirli, the Yochid HaMispalo, Ein Chayzalem Vayechulhu. He disagrees with the Torah. He should not say Vayechulhu. Why? They ain't Eidos LeYochid. The Yochid cannot say Eidos. Ve'eidos Shleima B'Inan. You need a whole Eidah, you need a minyan. Right? And therefore, Yochid shouldn't say Vayechulhu. L'hoy l'Kadosh Baruch Hu. D'hainu asora. V'im yirtze Yochid la'oimra. Let's say he wants to say it. So the Taz says, Lo Yiskavin L'Shem Eidus Elo Kekoira B'Torah. He should have the Chavonah that he's not doing it for Eidus. Okay, very good, very good. Says the Mishnah Brura. The Mishnah Brura Take, based on this Taz, he Take Paskins as follows. Ome Umar. The fish of Bezel no Midum Lakadosh Baruch Hu Ma'asav Reishis. Within Eide Bamida, it's mamish the lashon of the Taz. He adds Kidiksiv Va'amdu Shnei Anoshim. He adds the pasuk. Right. Then he says, "V'teiv leimer oisa biyachad." You should say it everybody together. B'tzibur Eide Shleima Beinu Lahoy Lakadosh Baruch Hu. And then he adds, "V'al kol panim." There at least should be Shnayim. Right. So this is the makar of people running around finding somebody to say Vayechulhu Tzadikis, okay? Yochid HaMispalel, says the Mishnah Brura, Yeshem Deinu Chayzilema Vayechulhu. We shouldn't say Vayechulhu again, like the Taz. Dein Eidus LeYochid. Yeshem Yochid Yochel Lema. Avalein Tzarech Hamida. He doesn't have to stand. Why does he have to stand? Because he's being chaman that it's not for Eidus. He's not supposed to be saying Eidus. So he doesn't have to stand. Right? He adds, the Taz says, if you want to say it, the Mishnah Brura says it's good that he should say it, but he says like the Taz, okay? That's the Mishnah Brura. Okay, so now we have a makkah why people are running around. Now let me tell you why you should not do that. Okay, so it so happens to be that the Rebbe once said that since we don't have the whole Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, right? We don't have the whole Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. There's a lot of halachas are missing. So in those places we don't have halacha from the Alter Rebbe, we should follow the Mishnah Brura. As the Rebbe gesagt, it was one of the Fabrengens, a Shabbos Fabrengen, that we should follow the Mishnah Brura. Okay, so that's wonderful. We follow the Mishnah Brura. But in this case, we do have halacha from the Alter Rebbe. And not only we do have a halacha from the Alter Rebbe is doiching the Taz. He pushes up the Taz. Alter Rebbe says the Feidish and taking the Taz, and based on what you just brought up. Okay. Where's the Alter Rebbe? Sif Yud Beis. Okay, so in Reish Samach Ches, Sif Yud Beis. If you want, you can follow this. Achat vil sachash ba'abes teigim lachse v'lema vaychulu v'shum yom tov shecholi is b'Shabbos she'neim meisei b'teichat tefillah, right? V'tzorach la'omer zachar tefillah kadei shalei l'chalik b'Shabbos l'Shabbos. This is where I got that the reason we do it is so that we should make a chiluk from one Shabbos to another Shabbos. No gul omer b'chol HaShabbos, we say it on every Shabbos. The makar of that, by the way, is a Taisus. If you want, you can look up in Taisus Psachim Kufa. Okay. Everything that we read in the Mechaber in the Shulchan Aruch. Then says the Alter Rebbe, if you forgot to say it in Shul, so I don't know if we'll have time, but I'll show you what the Alter Rebbe means over here. You're for sure going to say Vayechulhu, right? But Vayechulhu, you'll see later that there's a deis. The Alter Rebbe also passes has Shulchan Aruch that you should sit, right? What if you forgot Vayechulhu in Shul, right? Says the Alter Rebbe, so when you say Vayechulhu by Kiddush, what should you do? You should say it standing. Why are you saying it's standing? Because you're being mashlim that you missed the Eidus in Shul, right? So this was your question. We're standing. Why are we standing? Dafke, because we're saying it with Eidus, right? And you're a Yochid, right? So we see that the Alter Rebbe holds that there's no problem for a Yochid to say Vayechulhu, even without having kavanah that it's being not l'shem Eidus. You look at the Kuter Sachrim. He brings the Taz. He says, "Kulam b'yachad." The fibash kosev ataz. Hayochid ein tzarich lamid. The Yochid doesn't have to stand. Sharei ein lo l'skaven l'shem Eidus, because he's not supposed to be mekaven that he's doing it for Eidus. This is not the opinion of the Mata Moshe. It's not the Mogen Avram. Kan v'Shulchan Aruch Siman Reish Ayin Aleph she'tzichu lamed. Because the Shulchan Aruch itself says that when you say Vayechulhu Vayekiddush, the Beis Yosef paskins that you should stand. The Ramah says you sit, but the Beis Yosef says you have to stand. Why do you have to stand? For that reason, because it's Eidos, right? What? You don't? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this Mishnah Brura, apparently, the Alter Rebbe does not hold. The whole Mishnah Brura is based on the Taz. The Alter Rebbe does not accept the Taz. He doesn't accept the Taz. And he says that the Taz is going against all of these, the Mata Moshe, the Mogen Avram, the Shulchan Aruch, right? Beis Yosef, the Shem Orchos Chaim, Shlepil Kol Kach. Masha, Shem Ha'aroi Hoya Lahakpid, Lamei, Davkech, V'Pishin, Shemei, Deshlema, V'Hochin, No, Galmo. You should stand, even if you're not with a minion. You don't have to go run around and find somebody else, right? The hachi nohug alma, and this is the way the minhag is, says the Alter Rebbe. Okay. The next time somebody comes running over to you and says, "Yes, it's wonderful that you want to do like the Mishnah Brura, but I don't think you should be doing like the Mishnah Brura," when the Alter Rebbe is clearly writes the opposite. Okay.
Yeah, but isn't standing like Eidos?
Yeah. So if Alter Rebbe doesn't accept what the Taz says is that Yochid shouldn't say it because it's Eidos and Eidos is only with Aminim. No. Apparently you could do Eidos. Well, not real Eidos, but in this case, even though it's Eidos, it doesn't matter whether you're even a Yochid. You don't need to. Okay. What's the Mata Moshe, by the way, that the Alter Rebbe, the Mata Moshe is brought here in the Mogen Avram, and that is the Mata Moshe, Im Shochach La'omrei Bebeis HaKnesses, if you forgot to say it in Shul, right? Yomer Oiseh Shebekiddush Me'umad, like the Alter Rebbe brought from the Mata Moshe, right? Say it by Kiddush, but here you should say it after standing. Okay? After standing. And if that's the case, let's say the Mogen Avram quotes this by Mata Moshe, which is a raya clearly that it doesn't matter that you're not an Eido, that you're not with a minion. You don't need anything. You just, by yourself, you say Vayechulhu. You should stay b'kol ram. But that,
Sitting? If you miss the minion?
well, it depends. Saying it's sitting, that we'll soon see. Now that we mentioned about standing and sitting by Kiddush, I thought, you know what? Let's go look into a little bit into that whole parsha of standing and sitting. Okay?
Yeah.
I have three things here on my paper. That's the third one. Okay?
Very nice.
Let's look first the way it is in Shulchan Aruch. Reish Ayin Aleph. There is another Shulchan Aruch, no, in the big Shulchan Aruch, if you want, maybe. Reish Ayin Aleph. Mikadesh al kois smole. Shalei Bogum. Okay. So it says the Mechaber, the Oimer Vayechulhu, before you say Kiddush, which is the bracha of Agafen and the bracha of Hilchos Shabbos, first you should say Vayechulhu. And you should say it Me'umot. This is the Mechaber that the Alter Rebbe brings that is in conflict with the Taz. At home, you don't have a minion, right? It doesn't say you have to have a minion at home. You say it before, and you say Me'umot, right? Okay, V'chakach Be'Pri Agafen, then you say Be'Pri Agafen, V'chakach Kiddush, and then you say Kiddush. That's the Mechaber. Comes along the Ramah. V'yuchol Lamei B'shas HaKiddush. If you're standing by Vayechulhu, you could already stand already for the whole Kiddush. That's the Ramah. The first thing the Ramah says. Why? Because with Pashtus Kiddush, you should actually be sitting. Whatever. There's other places. Well, we're not going to have time. Maybe another time we'll go. We'll see. The Beis Yosef brings the Kolboy, where the Kolboy says that by Havdalah, it's better you should sit, and by Kiddush, it's better you should stand. Okay. But there's other svaras. The same svara that you sit by Havdalah is perhaps a svara that you should sit by Kiddush as well. Okay? Says the Ramah, but if you're going to stand for Vayechulhu, then already it would be chucha that you stand and then you sit in the middle, so you could remain standing even for Kiddush. But it is still better that you should sit. And this is from the Kolboy, okay? We're not going to have time, but okay, I would like to. Okay. Quotes again the Ramon, he says, and the meaning is that we even sit by Vayechulhu. So the Ramon goes like 2 steps over there. The Mechaber says to stand, okay, good, you're going to stand, you might could stand already for Kiddush. He says, but you know what, Kiddush is Tev Yosef, it's better you should sit. So you know what, that's the case. Forget the Mechaber, we're not going to go like the Mechaber, says the Ramon, and we could sit even for Vayechulhu. Since you're starting with that Vayechulhu, you're actually starting with the last two words of the pasuk before Yom Hashishi, Vayer Vaybeker, Yom Hashishi, and Yom Hashishi. The reason is because Yom Hashishi Vayechulhu Hashomayim spell out Yud Kei Vav Kei. So since you're starting Kiddush with Yud Kei Vav Kei, so the Kovet Hashem, you've lifted yourself up a little bit. This is the minig of Ashkenaz, this is the minig of the Ramah, right? Okay. So this is what the halacha is, that if you forgot, the Mata Moshe says that if you forgot, then even though the Ramah Paskins in the Mata, who the Mata Moshe? Mata Moshe was the, I'm not sure who it was, but apparently the Mata Moshe is going like the Ramah, right? Or he held that you sit for the whole Kiddush, right? And for that matter, you sit ready for Vayechulhu also. If you forgot to say Vayechulhu and Shul, then you should stand. As I like the Mata Moshe, right? Then you should say Vayechulhu. He just says you should say Vayechulhu and you should say Kulum, and then you just say it's standing. Okay. As far as the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, I'm sorry, what? What if? No, but apparently.
So what if you witnessed?
What if?
If you were a witness to somebody else saying Vayechulhu, does that count?
No. The saying Vayechulhu is apparently, according to the Taz, it's Mamish Edus, right? But that's only the Taz and the Mishnah Berurah. But everybody else seems to hold that yes, it is, but it doesn't have the restrictions of Edus. The Horaya, there's going, according to the Mata Moshe, and the Mechaber says you stand, regardless. The Mata Moshe says that if you're going to do it mitzad Eidos because you didn't do it in Shul, then you should stand also, right? So you're standing, and you're doing it because it's Eidos, but at the same time you don't, you're not makrid that it should be dafke Eidos like the Taz says. In other words, the Taz is a Das Yochid in this the Das Yochid, and apparently the Mishnah Berurah, goes with the Taz. It's a little bit shver, the Mishnah Berurah. I mean, I have a kasha of the Mishnah Berurah, because the Mishnah Berurah in that same place quotes the Mata Moshe, right? So if you're going to quote the Mata Moshe, that's so what you just quoted from the Taz, right? Whatever. If you want to macha pilpul and for the Mishnah Berurah, but the Mishnah Berurah, I mean, besides that, I'm recommending you shouldn't follow this because it's not the shit of the Alter Rebbe, right? The Mishnah Berurah seems to be Seiser himself, because the Mishnah Berurah brings the same Mata Moshe that the Alter Rebbe says is Araya and Kegen the Tas, Araya against the Tas. Okay, whatever that means. Anyway, we're kind of out of time, but the Alter Rebbe basically in Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe paskins like the Ramah that you mamish sit, right? Where are we? Reish Ayin Aleph. Reish Ayin Aleph. Teiv Lamed B'Shas B'Yis Vayechulhu. Avo B'Shas B'Chas HaKiddush Yosef Teiv Leishev. Avo Medina Seilon Nispashat HaMinig. Leishev Avo B'Shas HaMinig Pashas Vayechulhu. Mamish the Ramah, right? Why? Since you already said it in Shul standing, you don't have to be so much makbid when you repeat it by Kiddush, right? But still, you should lift yourself up a little bit. Okay. So here you see the Alter Rebbe pasking exactly like the. We know, however, that many things we paskin, and I don't think that the Rebbe himself says differently in the Siddur, but the Rebbe writes in the Haggadah by Kiddush. The Rebbe writes in the Haggadah that our minhag is to stand by Kiddush. That means that we are going to do like the Mechaber. Those places where the Alter Rebbe, not like the Mechaber, yeah, like the Mechaber, like the Mishos. Those places where the Alter Rebbe writes and Siddur differently than what he writes in Shulchan Aruch are basically places where Shulchan Aruch he wrote like the Ramah, because that was the Ramah was the Pesach in Ashkenaz, and that's how the halacha was in Ashkenaz. The Alter Rebbe lived in Europe, right? Just about all the places the Alter Rebbe writes differently, like not making a bracha on the Shol Yad, on the Shol Rosh, for example, right? These are all because the Mechaber the Beis Yosef, right? He's going according to Mechaber. In Siddur, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say, but the Rebbe says in Haggadah that that's our minhag. Our minhag is that this is also a situation that we follow the Mechaber, we follow the Beis Yosef, and we don't follow the Rambam, and we take a stand by Kiddush. Interestingly, what's the halach? What do you do Shabbos by day? Okay, I know by Shabbos by day. There's Kano Edus, there's nothing, right? There's other reasons why you stand in Kiddush. It's about praying Chaim, it's about. But does that apply to Kiddush by day as well? Okay? The other Edus obviously not, but for the other reasons that we stand. Okay. I know personally from my father, my Zayda, that they would stand Shabbos day. Okay? A lot of people want to bring a raya from the Rebbe because the Rebbe would come down the Fabrengen and the Rebbe would sit, right? 2 weeks ago, Shabbos was by the Elul. I'm sitting across Chaim Baruch, Halberstam, and Chaim Baruch Halberstam used to hang out, he used to help. So I said, I'll ask him. So he tells me what the Rebbe did at home, I don't know. But on Yom Tov, the Rebbe would eat all of the Seudas in the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment on the second floor of 770, up until Tashon, right? The Rebbe ate all the Seudas upstairs. He says, Yom Tov, or even Yom Tov, Shechol Yis B'Shabbos, upstairs when the Rebbe would make Kiddush, like the day Seudah, the Rebbe would stand. I just heard it from him 2 weeks ago. Why would the Rebbe sit by the Fabrengen? It's very possible because the Rebbe didn't want to be matriach that means thousands of people are going to have to stand. But the Rebbe did kind of lift himself up a little bit. What's the reason for that? By Yom HaShishi, we know the reason because the Ramah says the reason, because Yom HaSki Yud Kei Vavke, right? And yet the Rebbe used to do it, right? So, by Al Kain, the Rebbe used to kind of lift himself up a little bit, right? Like the Ramah says you're supposed to do by Yom HaShishi. So, there you have it.
He changed his stance.
Anyway, these are just a collection of random different things.
Very nice. So next week you're saying
If you want, next week we can go a little bit more into this issue.
next week.
Well, not today, next week. No. It's gonna be a while.
Next one's gonna be Yom Kippur. Next one is Seudas Shabbos.
Thank you so much.
Then the one after that. 5 weeks. But after that, we're starting every night. Other programs.
Okay, I hope you.
Talking about here in Shul.
What is this? I'm being. What's it called?